We have used Codespaces to experiment with Jupyter Notebooks, and we use this music and mental health data set off of Kaggle. We created some plots, etc. So based on that information and what we've learned from the notebook, what I now want to do is create a web app using Streamlit that will incorporate some of the things that we learned or used or generated in our notebook. Because it's so easy to use Streamlit from the Streamlit website, I'm going to do that. So if I go to Streamlit.io, sign in, and I've got a few of my apps that I've experimented with Streamlit. I'm going to create a new app, and I'm going to create one from a template, and it'll be a blank app. Now in this case, we are going to make an actual app, so I want to give it a URL. So I'm going to call this Music Mental Health Web App, and I'm going to try to see if this domain is available. It's available. I'm going to open GitHub Codespaces and deploy. And the nice thing about doing this from the Streamlit app is that it will load all the necessary libraries, etc., and we'll be able to run Streamlit right here within the browser. Okay, it takes a few minutes for it to load everything in. And we'll get this template that's really from the original Streamlit template. We are going to, as I said, take some of the information from our Jupyter Notebook and we're going to put it into a web app. Now we need to actually go to, we don't need this README. This is what we want to modify, the Streamlit_app.py. I'm going to erase what's here, and the first thing I'm going to do is add my import statements, which are all of my libraries that I'm going to need. I'm going to save time just by copying and pasting some of this code rather than typing it all out, but you can type this stuff into yours and see what you get. So over here, I'm going to say always rerun. So anytime I make changes to my file, it will automatically update. And so you can see here that I have got an error, no module named Plotly. This means that Plotly is not a library that's been installed with the Streamlit template. So for that reason, I'm going to go over here to my menu, top left. So down here is a terminal window, and you can see it's been used to actually start up my Streamlit app. So what I want to do is create a second terminal window. So I'm going to go down here to terminal and do a new terminal. And in here, I'm going to say, and it's pip install, and the one that we want, I believe, is Plotly Express. So Plotly_express. And I'm hoping that this will work. So let's see. So it's installing this all in your web browser, so not on your machine. Okay, and let's try rerunning this to see if we get another error. Okay, this time it looks like it came back with no errors, so that might have done the trick for us. Let's put in some code just so we can see something appear in the window. So I'm going to start with st.title and just put in our title, which is going to be Music and Mental Health Dashboard. And we'll always rerun this. Okay, that shows up, so that's a good sign. That means that all our imports are now accepted and we've got a title. So if it gives you an error that it can't find a module, you might have to come down here in a terminal window and do pip install in the name of the library. So that can happen. But generally with Streamlit, you get a lot of the libraries preloaded for you. The first thing we shall do with this is we're going to have to open up that CSV file that had all the data for our data set. So I'm going over here, again, like we did with the other GitHub Codespace, and I'll go to Explorer, and we're going to do another folder called Data. I'm going to find my music and mental health. So remember the CSV, and that was from that Kaggle data set, the mental health survey. So you should have that somewhere on your computer if you follow the previous tutorial. We're just going to drag this one up here again, so it's within this code space. And now that we've got that, so remember that it's a comma-separated spreadsheet, and what I think will make sense is to put this into a function, just to kind of organize things. So a function is def to define, and I'll call this get data. And you have the open close parentheses for the any kind of arguments or inputs, and there's none on this. And then I'll make a variable, I'll just call df as short for data frame. And I'll get some errors over here while I'm typing, but we shouldn't worry about that until we're finished. And then it's PD for pandas, read underscored CSV. The nice thing here is that, there's so many prompts here, so you can see a lot of the functions that are available to you. And then inside the parentheses, we give it the argument, which is the name of the file, and we know it's data. And then over here is the name, so we'll just do mxmh survey results.csv. That's the function. In order to actually get it to run, we have to call it. So we'll say get data. And I have to return it, right? So I'm going to set up my own df equals get data. What I should do is just return this. So let me do that, return. And so returning it says read it, and then when it reads it in, return it to whoever called it. So down here I'm calling it, and I'm going to put it into df. So let's rerun this again, see what we get. Okay, no errors. I'm getting this down here, this install, but we don't need it. Because it's a pretty large data set, we don't want to have to reread that entire spreadsheet again and again. So there's a nice thing in Python. So it's above the function. We're going to put at st.cache underscore data. And what that does is it realizes that this function, as long as the data is cached, you don't need to reload it again. Okay, if we were to go in and change something about the spreadsheet, it would understand that something's changed there, so it would reread it. But because it doesn't, it won't keep loading it over and over again. First thing I do want to do, though, is if you remember from the notebook, I cut off the ages. So we had all those outliers. So I'm going to cut off the ages here before I return it. So I am going to actually do a df equals, and then I'll do df equals. If you remember before, it was df and then with a subset of df, and the column that we're looking for is age, and we had said before less than or equal to, I think I did less than or equal to 45. I'm going to do up to 50 this time. I think before we just used the word data as the name of our variable, but we'll just use df now. So df age, and we only had one here. Here we say return df, so that returns it to where it gets called. Let's rerun this. I just want to make sure we're not getting any errors, and that's good. And I'm going to divide my dashboard up into 4 different windows. I'll have the home page or whatever. I'll have information about the music, some information about the mental health aspects, and then I'm going to have a page that's interactive so the user can interact with it. To do this, I will create a sidebar. And again, just to save typing, I'm just going to put it in here. But let's look at the code. So an ST sidebar will create the sidebar. That means that anything within here is all about the sidebar. So the subheader is menu, so that's going to be the subheader of the sidebar. And then the user will select from a select box of these 4 things. So I've got home, music information, mental health information, and interactive information. So let's, I'm not sure why it's not, that's why it's just, so if I come over here, I'll just say always rerun. And what we see here is there's our dashboard showing up. So it's on the left side, and we've got the 4 different choices. I haven't put the code in for what's going to happen. This will close it. This will open it. Okay, so a nice little easy way to add a sidebar to your app. And then, of course, we need to do something when they select. So selected is our variable for what they've picked, and we'll just paste that in again to save time. What will happen is it will just check what got selected. So, well, if I selected home, my home page, I'm really just going to display the whole data set, which is the data frame. So I'm just writing that out. And then elif means else if selected equals. So if they've selected music, I'm going to, and I've basically set up these as 3 different functions. So I haven't written them yet, and that's why we've got the error here. That's how we would choose. And if I go back, so the home page works, and that's just the data file, and that's exactly what it is. It will just display the entire thing right there if you want it to. Just to eliminate these errors for the other ones, let me create those functions. So I've got def, and I called them music info. And I'm just going to put in a subheader there. So st subheader. And let me copy and paste that for the other ones. So this is mh info. We'll put the forward information there. And this will be interactive. Now if I rerun this, I can choose each of the 4, mental health and interactive. So I've got my 4 pages working. We can move this over a little bit to get a little more of that showing. What I might do is hide this just so we can see more of our app. Starting with the music information, what I decided is for the music, I'll just put maybe a couple of pie charts. And this is all really just as an example. What I think I'm going to do is, let me go back to my Jupyter notebook, because really this is where I'm taking the information from. Let me run all so we see all the plots show up. And we'll see it start running through the different cells. So let's scroll down to where I had my pie charts showing up, and they're still running. I think I decided I wanted to do this with Plotly. So really I'm just going to take the code here from Plotly and put it in. I'm going to grab this here, copy this, and go back to my music info. I'm going to display 2 different pie charts. So what I'm going to do is create 2 functions, one to create one pie chart, one to create the other. And I'll call this def services pie chart. And I'm going to paste this in. One thing you need to do with Python is make sure it's correctly indented. Okay, now the one thing is this fig show doesn't work here in Streamlit. It's a different line, so you have to say st.plotly chart. And we say fig, which is the figure that we've created. And then I want it the full container width. So it's use container width equals true. And let me just try that to see if that, so if I say services pie chart, and I don't want data, right? Because I'm using df here. df, and there we go. Okay, so here's my pie chart from my other Jupyter notebook, and we've got it appearing here in our web app. Okay, and the second one I'm going to call def music effects pie chart. And I'll copy this, but it's going to be essentially the same, but this will be, the column that I'm looking at is going to be music effects. So this is whether or not it helped you, listening to music helped with any of your mental health. Here we just need to change the title. I think that's okay. Now, instead of putting them one under each other, I'm going to use columns. So I'm going to say column 1 and column 2 is going to be st columns 2. So that creates 2 columns. First one's called call 1, second one call 2. And then I can say with call 1, and just tab that in, and then with call 2, I'll do my music effects pie chart. And one thing I think I might have to do is set the layout for my page to be a wide width. I will have to do that down here in my main page below all of my functions. So I'm going to put this in. So stpage, set page configuration. So I'm setting up my page title, and I want a wide layout, and I want the sidebar initially expanded. So let me rerun this. Home, music. Oh, effects is small e. Okay, that might be the issue. Music. There we go. Okay, and I think if I widen this, they'll be the same size. So it tries to fit it as best it can. Now we've got the two of them in columns. If we wanted to change this to say, I don't know, 24, and we could do 24 just to, it resizes them. But it will resize as you resize the window. That is the music part of it. Okay, let's move on to the mental health. We've got another page. We're going to put mental health. In this one, I'm going to do some box plots. Let me do another function up here. So I'll call this def, and I'll call it MH issues. And this, I'm just going to paste this in from what I've had in my notebook. So if you recall from my notebook, to get the box plot, you had to split out the different mental health disorders from columns into separate lines or rows. So that's this melting, and I put it into a new data frame called df-long. We put it into our box plot and plot it out using the Plotly chart. Let me rerun and go here to our mental health. Oh, I have to call it, right? So mental health. Let me put in MH issues box plot. Okay, so I'm not quite sure why that took so long, but it finally gave us that. So this is giving us that nice box plot of how people reported of the 4 conditions: anxiety, depression, insomnia, and OCD. Okay, so that took a minute for it to click in. And then the second one I'm going to do is the bar charts with my 4 little subplots. So I'm going to do another function up here, def, and I'll call this effects by issue. And again, you've got to make sure that they are correctly indented. Let's move out here so we can see it. So we're going to make the subplots, and this is, again, from my subplots, which are up here, right? So it's essentially this, making the subplots, and then I filtered based upon the disorder. Let's just go back here. So I'm making my subplots a 2x2 of the 4, and then I filter on just the depression greater than 7. So again, these are people who are really suffering from these disorders. I create the bar chart. Then I'll do the same for anxiety and insomnia. I'll add in OCD. And then the last thing we want to do is, if you recall before, I wanted everything on the same scale. So for the rows, it's a 2x2, so we're just going to loop through each and then update so that the range in the y-axis is from 0 to 200. And then I'll do this Plotly chart, and it will hopefully give us this nice subplot. So let me go back to image info, and I'll put in effects by issue. And so indentation after on line 36. Filter DF. Oh, sorry, this needs to be indented. Okay, now we can get it. So again, there are my, make this a little bit bigger, the 4 subplots from before with how listening to music improved that particular disorder. So we've got the 4 disorders and the amounts, and then if you notice, I've changed it so my axes, my y-axis is 200 on each chart, so they've got the same scale. A lot there, but this is really just, once you get one, you can copy paste and do the other ones. And then my last one is going to be my interactive, where we can have the user interact a little bit. Because this one's going to be interactive, let's go down to our interactive info. I'm going to let the user choose. The first plot is going to be the age filter. So if you remember before, I did some graphing according to different ages. And so this way we're going to let the user choose which age group they might want to look at. I'm going to set up this age filter, and this is going to be a select box. It'll be a drop down, and they can choose one of the 4 age groups that are within our data set. And then the other one will be a condition filter. So they get to choose one of the 4 conditions they want to look at in terms of the graph. This one's going to be a radio button. These are here just to show you some different options for user input. So a drop down and radio buttons. So again, we've got the 4 disorders here. So the user will be able to choose one of the graphs by age and the other graph by condition. And let me create those graphs first, and then the user can choose on them. So let me go down here. I'll go add in a new function. So this will be services pie chart by age. And we will have an input here, and this will be the age filter that they choose from that interactive info. And let me just save time, put this code in here, and I'll go through it. So we have a bunch of if statements. So if they chose 10 to 20, we're going to create if you remember, this is kind of a sub data frame based upon age, where age is greater than 10 or less than 20. And then 21 to 30 will be greater than or equal to 21, less than or equal to 30, 31 to 40, and 41 to 50. Okay, so that gives us the age data, which will be kind of our sub data frame. And then we do our pie chart based upon this data frame. Okay, so it's the same pie chart as our music information, but we're going to do it with a subgroup or sub data set. And then the rest is the same. Let's go back down here, and what we can do is after the age filter, we'll call this. So we'll say services pie chart by age, and we'll call age filter. And let's try interactive. There we go. Sometimes, I don't know why, but if you go in and just change some of any of the text, it kind of regenerates. So here we go. So now we've got the choices. So you can see as you change, so 69% of 10 to 20-year-olds choose Spotify, but then it drops down to 65. Older people, much fewer, so 34.6% choose Spotify. So that is allowing interaction on the primary streaming services. And then I want to create another one, which is, I'll call this age condition bar chart. And this one's going to have our condition filter that they chose down below. And here I'll just add in this code and go through it with you. So the average condition is going to be grouping by age based upon whatever the condition filter is. So what's going to go in here is either depression, OCD, insomnia, or anxiety, right? So that gets passed in, and then we're going to group by age on that column and get the average. And then we're going to make our bar chart based upon that and the condition filter, and then we'll plot that. So let's see if that. Oh, I haven't called it. We need to call this. So it's going to be age condition bar chart, and it's passing a condition filter. And there we go. So here's anxiety, insomnia, OCD, and depression. So we can see them based upon which particular disorder they want to look at. Normally you'd see it on a big screen, and because we said use the wide screen, so we can just go back and look at our 4. Again, music information, mental health, which has the 2 charts, and then interactive, which is allowing us to choose filters on this. Okay, for this one to work, and we want to be able to see it in Streamlit, we're going to have to commit it. We can write in here and say initial commit of first version of app. We'll commit it. I would like to stage my changes, yes, and then I want to sync them. This will pull and push from origin main, and I will do that as well, and I'll say sure. Okay, so once we've committed and pushed it, we should be able to go back to Streamlit, go back to our Streamlit apps. And I've got other ones, but this is the one that I was just working on, the Music Mental Health web app. And if I click on it, it should try to deploy this for me. And looking at this, I'm in the same spot here as I was within the GitHub Codespaces, where it doesn't understand this Plotly Express. So there is a way to overcome this, and this is to go back over here, and there's something called, if I go back to my file manager, this requirements.txt, and this is what's telling it if it's not installed to make sure it's installed. And so I need this Plotly Express. Okay, so it's ensuring that Streamlit is installed, and I'm adding this Plotly Express to make sure that's installed as well. Now I've modified this file, which is still part of my project, so what I'm going to do is go back to my source control, and I'll say added Plotly Express to requirements.txt. And I'll commit that, yes, and I will sync that change, yes. And now I will go back to Streamlit to my apps. I'll refresh this, see if it all synced up, and we'll give it another shot. Woohoo, look at that. Okay, so my main page has my data set, and I can scroll up or down in that. I've got my music information, which is my 2 columns with my bar charts, my box plot and my bar charts in subplots, and my interactive, where I can choose an age group to see their streaming service preference, and then I can also filter on mental health disorder by age to see the age distribution there. There we have it. We have an example of a dashboard where you can start with your Jupyter notebook, play with the data set, find out information that you find to be interesting, and then you can then take it over to Streamlit, where you can display that information in a nice interactive way. So this would be a good time for you to try maybe to pull something else from your Jupyter notebook and see if you can incorporate it into Streamlit, noting that we had to change a few things here in terms of the names of variables, etc. So give it a shot and see if you can add something somewhere on this page. Remember that in order for this to all work and get saved, you want to, once you've made any changes, commit them and then sync them back up with GitHub. And your stuff will be then stored both in Codespaces and in your GitHub repository. And then the nice thing is that it is available to others publicly as a web app on the Streamlit server. One thing you might want to do is close down your Codespaces when you're done running them. So we'll close that up. And if you go to Codespaces, I might want to then stop the Codespace just so it stops running and you're not using up your time on Codespaces. If you use too much time in Codespaces, they will start charging you. I don't think you'll ever reach that, but okay, so there is your Streamlit app from a Jupyter notebook.